Greetings. We chose this location today because Air Force One, a decommissioned version of it, is directly behind us. And I think it's a unique backdrop for a show here at the National Harbor in the Washington, D.C. area. We're actually in Oxon Hill, Maryland, but there's an area that's been defined as National Harbor. And there are a number of hotels here, and there used to be my favorite supercharger in the world here that is no longer here. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. We cover three things today. The first we cover is Elon versus the chairman of Tesla versus the SEC. The second thing we cover today is Elon and what's going on in the SpaceX zone. And then finally, we take another look at things we learned about the factory facilities that we thought were interesting, that might be worth noting for you guys as well. I wanted to take time and note that I saw Donovan and their other friends that will say hello. Our viewers have asked that we wait until the end of the show to say hello to you guys, so I'll follow through on that, but I do appreciate the hellos, and we also appreciate comments and questions we might be able to field. So, as you can see over my shoulder, that's a decommissioned Air Force One that is now open for viewing. We're back outside, and as you know, it's still cold here in Washington, D.C., but you know, I really enjoy the outdoors as well as the lighting we get and the opportunity to pick up video that you normally don't get indoors. Wanted to finally thank our subscribers as well as Patreon supporters. Your help is definitely appreciated and makes a big difference. We continue to work on things like sound. As you can see today, I have a lavalier mic with a wind baffle on it. And if you have any comments about loudness, etc., can you hear us? I'm happy to respond and modify what we're doing to embrace your recommendations. So there's an open question that's been going on right now, and that is Elon has seemed a little frantic over the last couple of weeks. A lot of decisions being made. Many of those decisions, for example, the lowering of the price, may result in lawsuits for Tesla, as well as, you know, the closing of service centers or viewing centers on a large scale being announced in a haphazard fashion. So there's a lot of things happening. It's been hurting the stock a bit, but as people understand that you know, most of those changes that are being made are good ideas relative to lowering costs and therefore improving efficiency. So we have to say that kind of in general, these are good ideas. It's just that a lot of employee disruption and low morale and other things will hit the company until all of this is sorted out, which is a good reason to actually do it in an organized fashion rather than a tweak and then implement fashion as we've seen. So one of the questions was to try to figure out why is he so frantic to make so many decisions so quickly. And the answer is that the 11th is a big day of March, because Tesla has to respond to the SEC contention that Elon breached the agreement that they had. And I believe that Elon is of the feeling that the consequences could be severe and might impact his leadership of Tesla, and therefore by making all these decisions now, he gets the ability to sort of have a footprint on things before he's out the door. I hope this is not the case. I hope he's still going to be in command. Several legal experts have indicated that the SEC, even though they'll likely win the ruling, will likely choose to make it a slap on the wrist, maybe a larger fine in this round, and kind of go from there. So we're hoping that's the outcome, but it's kind of unknown. But it does seem strange as to why Elon is aggressively making all these decisions at the last minute at the same time, and the amount of disruption involved is rather severe. The other bit of news that I think is affecting his thought process is that, again, I hope that this is not the case, but the weed smoking incident in which he was videotaped smoking weed and indicated that he does not do it that often, was a situation that it was announced that the Air Force is reviewing what's going to happen with SpaceX, and what it looks like will be the response right now is that the company will have to perhaps put forward a new CEO to, on a temporary basis, run operations. And that new CEO would have to have a security clearance, which Elon is about to lose based on the weed smoking incident. And so the smell of things is that it's possible that what you do in one company that's funded with outside money can influence another. So it looks like the storm clouds are coming over. I do think that he'll weather both storms and it won't be an issue, but it's sort of an explanation for why we're seeing such crazy activities happen right now, which is a lot of big decisions being made, at the same time they're being disseminated by Twitter. Those decisions can influence the stock of the company because they're fairly large in terms of the dollar impact, and you have seen some stock price move as these have occurred. The next question that comes up out of all of this is what's going on with the new chairman of Tesla. And as Elon indicated, that while he's still CEO and the largest shareholder, he in effect wasn't wearing the chairman's hat anymore, but in reality he's still in control of the company and therefore doesn't have to worry about what his chairman might have to say in opposition to what his decision making is. In particular, it's my belief that the new chairman of Tesla was influential in the decision to bring on the now former it resulted in the departure of the seasoned general counsel who had represented Tesla in matters related to SEC. And with that person gone now, there isn't a seasoned SEC veteran to address issues that might arise when it comes to managing Tesla's relationship with the SEC and how this is all going to play out over the next 3 to 6 months and obviously multiple years. I have to say that I do feel Elon's frustration. The hedge funds have done a good job of leveraging their command of the legal process in which they can manipulate the stock. So I believe that he's attempted to battle these guys by buying stock and making announcements, et cetera, et cetera. But when you have people with collectively hundreds of years of experience in how to manipulate stocks and get away with it legally, having someone who's relatively inexperienced get kind of baited into decision making that gives them an upper hand on him is kind of a bad move. But I agree with him. There's a lot of SEC rules that allow hedge funds to operate in bad ways that don't serve investors well, but can line the pockets of these hedge funds. And by the way, I don't know if you've noticed this, but there are certain news reports that are timed and that are information provided by hedge funds designed to move the stock just a little bit so that the hedge funds can get in position to make some money and then move the stock down. So stay tuned. I think that we'll see what happens with this. The next thing that I wanted to review is a concept that's called the 80-20 rule and equilibrium, which are two things that I think are playing right now into what's going on with Elon. There's a business principle that says that if 20% of what you're doing is not failing, then you're not on the edge enough to find opportunity. And when you watch Elon in terms of the things he does, be it the gull wings or some of the other things he's been doing, he definitely likes finding the edge and attaching some utility to that edge, kind of fits his personality. So as things stabilize theoretically over the next month or so, I really expect Tesla to do either an acquisition or something that's out the box that reflects his interest in finding the edge. I noticed from several of my classmates from Stanford and other business people, particularly the consultant friends, that they really get bored when it comes to routine operations of thanks for the help challenge. The issue that comes up is that when you're trying to find the edge and you have a huge company that's cash strapped, the edge can create major problems. And one example that comes to mind is the door handles on the Model S and X that pop out, or I think it's just the S that pops out. I don't know if the X does. But those door handles freeze in the winter and cold climates. Um, they've perhaps been the #1 repair item, uh, you know, for the vehicle, all vehicles, since they were put in. And I'm really hoping that someone figures out how to switch those babies out into something that can be maintained, that it's more traditional, that just can be maintained better. Speaking of this, one of the lurking questions that I've been fascinated by is Elon Musk flew to Norway because it's the highest concentration of Tesla vehicles, in particular the Model S. And we have a lot of irate owners that are whose vehicles are in disrepair of some sort for a long period of time. And I definitely feel for those folks. Just a note on this whole repair issue is the fact that, as you know, Tesla's been pushing 3 shifts, 24 hours a day to get Model 3s produced and shipped. And they've obviously rolled back the numbers of Model X and S that are being produced. One of the lurking issues, I believe, for Tesla right now is what I call the 90-day rule, which is that if you look at any of Tesla's vehicles, there's a constant process of reviewing customer complaints or repair issues or breakdowns, etc., to determine how to modify the car to make it a better car. And so this is one of the benefits Tesla has experienced in the vertical integration process. So hence why I wasn't so worried about the Consumer Reports negative statement, because any and all of those concepts will be baked into a modification. An example that comes to mind of this is that one of our show advisors pointed out that you could break the small back window of the Model 3, and once you broke that window, you could get into the car without an alarm going off or it notifying you by phone that your car was broken into. And there's been a security update that closes that out. And he mentioned that to me, and I thought that was really cool. So on a soft basis, there's an example of a change that's occurred that benefits all Model 3 owners, that addresses an issue quickly that's been highlighted by customers. There are other things that are car related that are not just software updates that represent part of the changes going on at Tesla. So the open question is, if you have a car that every 90 days gets modified, in theory, after a year, you've got about 100% different car than you had a year ago. And this is terrific because it bakes in new knowledge, etc., that allows people to have a better car overall. The challenge, though, is that if there's a part needed by the older vehicles, you now have the challenge of having to go back and figure out and produce parts that perhaps won't fit on the updated versions of the car. So you're now having to work off of one-off production situations, and this is very challenging because it's very expensive to do individual pieces or very small numbers of pieces. It's far easier to produce and store large numbers of inventory parts, and then they can be shipped out. So I just thought it was fascinating. Elon's process for dealing with this was to fly to Norway and have meetings and hire more service staff. But I'm still confused. No matter how much service staff you hire, if they have no parts to work with, how exactly are those cars going to get fixed? Hence why the folks in Norway are a little upset right now because of how long these repair activities are taking for their vehicles. It's unfortunate, but I think it's part of sort of where Tesla is processed right now. And so hopefully, somebody can figure this out. The one piece that comes to mind that I think ends up making Model 3 ownership better in that regard is that, as you all know, there's a 100,000 car requirement before secondary manufacturers might see enough business to actually start making parts for those cars. So the challenge with that is that we're 3 years away from that, because if you put non-Tesla parts or approved parts on the car, it might violate the warranty. So, you know, what's going to get done after warranties expire in 2 or 3 years is kind of irrelevant if you need to get your car fixed right now. But, you know, it's possible that, you know, some solutions could be arrived at. Brian suggested 3D printing of parts might be one way to get that done. At any rate, it's a problem. Tesla doesn't have the answer to it. You have angry customers related to it. And it's hard right now because they need the revenue from full cars being sold as much as possible. So time and attention tends to be focused on those vehicles getting produced, shipped, and sold rather than the opposite. I've spoken about it several times regarding what to do about dealerships and that Tesla would not go to it. The only reason Tesla does not do dealerships was they were fearful of aligning the needs of the salespeople with the corporation rather than having it aligned with the dealer against customers. And the problem I'm seeing right now is the headaches between customer and company are equally as bad because Tesla's cash is so short because they don't have the ability to carry parts and other things that a dealer network might do. So I really am hoping, it has some bad parts to it, but if Tesla knuckles under and does a dealer network, we could see service centers everywhere in the United States and around the world in a better distribution that would support, you know, sort of customer happiness than we've seen. And I think it's sort of the next frontier of where we're headed with the company. The next thing that we'll see what happens with this. It's unfortunate what's going on, but I hope we're able to sort of get through and get this figured out and make sure, you know, we don't have all these unhappy customers with cars that are lacking parts, etc. And I think that would be a nice sort of change of pace. You know, there were comments made by Brian, Donovan, etc. I want to thank you guys for sharing your comments. I didn't catch if there might be other folks that had said hello, but I know we have several of you that are watching us live, and we appreciate your doing so. The last thing that, yep, hey Bob, thanks for the growing pains that dealership won't solve, okay? The last thing I wanted to cover today is we're sort of stepping through sort of interesting developments that we picked up when we went to the factory. And the second version of this I wanted to review is the fact that in the case of Apple, if I were to casually guess, I would say Apple is generating about $500,000 a day in swag and other sales at their company store. Google doesn't sell computers, etc., as Apple does at the store, but Google, with bags, hats, all manner of things with the Google logo on it, is selling something like $50,000 to $100,000 a day. And so I'm bringing these up to you because when I went to the Tesla factory, I was in an interesting mode where I was like, wow, this is going to be great. I can get some swag, be it bags, pens, etc., with Tesla logos on it. We can send it out to Patreon folks. This is got to be great. So I get there, and there are 6 expensive t-shirts and 3 $35 hats and a $250 jacket, and that's it. And I was kind of shocked because I believe that Tesla has one of the most recognizable and appreciated brands in the world. And they could easily challenge the Google numbers if they actually had a factory store with all that stuff in it, you know, that people could benefit from. So I did do a follow-up on this, and Elon did say he was opening a Tesla store on Amazon.com. I went to the store and checked it out. Went to the store, checked it out, and you know, basically it has, you know, probably 20 items in there, I would say. Still way lower than what it should be, and it's not really reflecting, I think, the creativity of the company, which is part of what really good swag is about. So we look forward to sort of this being done better. Greetings, Christian and Cindy. Good question, Cindy. Do they stock them at the showrooms? The impression we've been getting is that you should stock parts at the showrooms, but based on how short they've been, uh, you know, based on how short they've been of parts, it's quite clear that even in the places they're supposed to be stored, there aren't any parts there to use, and that's been part of their slowdown in people getting their cars repaired. So that's an excellent question, and I think that if you had a dealer network, those dealers usually pay for regional parts warehouse access, and they help stock parts that Tesla can then use for their customers, which is the main reason why I'm hoping that Tesla decides to change their plan so that customers can get better service versus Tesla driving long distances to customers, or vice versa. At any rate, interesting circumstance. I wanted to note that we're sort of at the end of our time here. I will be taking you guys out with more over-the-fence images of Air Force One that's been decommissioned behind me. Also wanted to encourage you to remember 20 leg lifts a day. Thanks for the 10 push-up test there, Donovan. I will do 10 push-ups before I jump in the car. Any comments you guys have about sound or video would be appreciated. We definitely work hard to try to acquire equipment to address issues that you might have or notice. One last quickie note was that there's actually, yeah, thanks Donovan for the on-video offer. One last note is there is a car that one of our viewers mentioned that is partially being charged by solar panels on the skin of the car, which I think is a cool idea, but my understanding was that it's really difficult with that small surface area to get much power pulled in. But I wanted to encourage you guys to check it out because it's an interesting idea, and hopefully it has some kind of an impact. Without further ado, I think, like I said, this is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. I want to again thank our Patreon and subscribers for your support. Look forward to any and all comments that are constructive. We like Tesla, we want them to do well, so for those of you who are hyper negative, this may not be the channel for you. We also want to note that we cover the news, and it might be bad about Tesla, but we want the company to do well, and kind of go for it from there. Again, this is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. German, tschüss. French, au revoir. Hebrew, lahitrot. Farsi, hoda hafez. Chinese, ni hao ma. And in Jamaica, we say, enough respect, man. Walk good.